And now we welcome back in Jimmy Stein, team expert for BamaOnLine. Jimmy, Alabama gets an important SEC road victory on Saturday, 40-17 over Mississippi State. It wasn't all good. You know, there was some bad in there too, especially early. I don't know what it is about Alabama and slow starts offensively, but I mean, it was once again, it really took a broken play, a touchdown run from Jalen Milroe, and then a pick six to really get things going. But at the same time, it's tough to argue against a 23-point victory when you're going on the road. Mississippi State's not a great team, but it's still the SEC. I wouldn't say they're completely at the bottom of the barrel. So there's also a lot of good to take away from this game as well, and particularly, with the offensive line, we'll get to that. The defense really at several different positions. We'll try to get to that as much as we can. Let's talk a little bit about Jalen Milroe, though, because going in, one of the important things, we talked last week on Thursday Night Todd, and it was the question that was asked to both of us was, what would you consider to be a successful game for Jalen Milroe? You said getting the win. That was certainly crucial, very important. I brought up the turnovers, not turning the football over. He didn't have any. That's fantastic. So I thought he had a good game, and I thought his ability to still have a very high yards per attempt average, despite the fact that he only had 12 attempts. He was, I think, 10 of 12 for it was 164 yards, but that's a great yards per attempt average. And he did it without targeting anybody deep. Like, he didn't have that explosive downfield play, a 50, a 60, 70-yard touchdown or something that really helps your average. I thought he was a lot better as far as processing, going through his reads a little bit more, working the intermediate parts of the field. He had a couple of really good balls. So I saw growth from Jalen Milroe on Saturday. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty good about where he's heading. Is he perfect? No, he's still taking unnecessary sacks. But, not turning the football over and working the intermediate parts of the field, I feel like those are two, areas that we thought that he needed to improve in. And he's making improvements.
Yeah, there's no question. I think he's even doing things that were previously thought that he wouldn't be good at all, or there were serious doubts about. I mean, first of all, he won the game on the road. Alabama had not played well in 9 of their last 10 road games, and Alabama played pretty well, and a big part of that was solid play from the quarterback position. So that's one thing. Secondly, as you've pointed out, completing balls in that intermediate area, because there wasn't the deep ball that padded the stats. There wasn't the cheap 60 or 70 yarder where Burton or somebody got behind the DBs. These were all harder earned throws, and he not only made all of them, Clint, he made 10 in a row in this game. He had made his last 5 in the previous game. So at one point, Jalen Milroe had completed 15 balls in a row. These were things that a lot of fans, a lot of critics have said he wouldn't ever be able to do. He did all of those things while not turning the ball over. One last thing he did, now it's not on every throw, and because it's not on even every throw in the NFL, but there were occasions when his primary receiver was not open. He held the ball until someone else came open. Those were things that we were told sometimes by fans that he cannot do. He did that too. So he's improving, I would even say, a lot, week to week to week. I would just warn fans that, look, for young quarterbacks, and he's still young, year 3, this is only going to be his 6th start this upcoming weekend in College Station. What I would warn fans is, look, quarterback progression is never linear. You don't get better and better and better and better and better and better until they give you a gold jacket. I mean, that's not how it works. That's not how it's worked for anyone ever. So it's not going to work for Jalen either. There's going to be what I would call stops and starts, or he's going to go sideways, or he's going to have a clunker. That's how this sport works. You don't just improve every time out forever.
Whoa, hold up, Jimmy. Tua Tagovailoa is doing phenomenal things for the Dolphins, and he did not have. He was as good yesterday as he's been all season, right? So that kind of proves your point. I mean, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now, but yesterday it was, not one of his better performances, not one of the team's better
Exactly.
performances. But I mean, even a guy like Tua is doing really good things at the highest level of football. He can have his ups and downs just like anybody else.
Yeah, and Jalen Hurts, there's a guy who's improved a ton, but he hasn't improved week to week. I mean, again, sometimes you go backwards. I heard an NFL guy the other day say Jalen's still not one of the more accurate passers downfield, and there's still some things he's working on. But the point is, Jalen Milroe is without a doubt improving week to week. He's doing things that we were told by some that he would never be able to do. He's already doing those things. So we should be thrilled actually with his progression. I'm just anticipating at some point him not improving a particular week
This would be the
because that's
week.
just kind of typical.
This would be the week, Jimmy. I mean,
Yeah, this is
it
going to be a tough environment.
yeah, I mean, to expect him to be perfect, and he's still not perfect. I mean, that's the thing. He's still, you talked about, working through his progressions, trying to, find somebody open. Sometimes he does that too long, and he gets sacked. That internal clock's got to speed up a little bit, and the instinct has to become, okay, throw the football away. It's not there. Live to fight another day. And that's something that, Will Rogers, he had 3 interceptions. He did not have a great performance. He has not had a great performance against Alabama, really, in any of the games that he's played. He's played like 12 of them things by this point, it feels like. But at the same time, when they did have success and went down there and scored a touchdown, I think their first passing touchdown since 2014 against Alabama, it was because Will Rogers was willing to throw the football away. And it was things worked there. He threw it away. He kept himself, instead of it being 2nd and 14 or 2nd and 15, it's 2nd and 10. That's a lot more manageable. You get in that 2nd and 14 or 15 range, and your chances of that drive continuing are very, very slim. It takes some very fluky things, not fluky, but you get what I'm saying. Your chances of continuing the drive obviously decrease quite a bit. But yeah, I thought that he played extremely well. He's showing improvement in some areas where he needed to show improvement. And when you start combining some of those things, if he can work the short to intermediate parts of the field, if the play calling it better suits him as far as the passing game is concerned, on top of the fact that he's such a dynamic runner, that can make him a quarterback that very few teams in college football have. You might have quarterbacks who are more consistent as far as decision making and can do some things a lot better than Jalen Milroe, but it kind of balances itself out. If he can do a lot of these things, good to great, even adequate in some areas, then when you throw in the things that he can do that not many other quarterbacks can, it evens the playing field and it gives Alabama one of the better quarterbacks in college football. He's just got to continue to make steady growth and development, and I do think that will continue to happen. But you're 100% right, and I like that you brought that up because it's important. It's an important week to bring it up because I think this environment is going to be a lot more difficult. The crowd's going to be. I will say the cowbells are pretty loud. That's a tough
Right.
environment. It was a good litmus test, to see how he would do on the road. The only time we had seen him play on the road in any sort of meaningful action was against Arkansas, and he did some good things on the ground. He put that game on his shoulders in a lot of ways. He weathered the storm after Alabama, the lead started dwindling, and he helped Alabama get a key victory and win pretty handedly by the end of the game. But at the same time, having the game plan built around him, having the opposing defense have time to prepare for him and what he does well, and try to take advantage of the things he doesn't do well. This was his first test, and I think that he passed.
Oh, absolutely. And what Milroe is, I don't love this comp or analogy because it's not apples to apples, but I look at what the Colts are doing with Anthony Richardson. That pick was highly criticized. I mean, when the Colts took Richardson at 4, a lot of fans were upset. A lot of football fans sort of mocked it because Anthony Richardson had very questionable success at Florida. He was just kind of a tools guy that some people believed he couldn't even get it all together in college football. It's nuts to think he's going to get it all together in the NFL. But he was a high tools guy. And guess what? It's just 4 games into his NFL start, and who knows how it's going to work out. Let's remember RG3 was the NFC Offensive Rookie of the Year. Uh, but so far, so good. Richardson's numbers are great. I saw just this morning 7 touchdown passes, 1 interception. after 4 games, completing, I think, 60% of his throws. The Colts having a little more success than some people thought, in part because of Anthony Richardson. I think Milroe is so much of a similar bet. I mean, in terms of the tools, if Milroe puts it all together, he is an absolute weapon. You just don't know if he'll put it all together or not because he's a young quarterback with very little experience, just like Anthony Richardson. But I think so far so good, and he will continue to improve even if there's a clunker. And I'm not saying there will be this weekend. I'm just saying this is his toughest test yet. If he doesn't pass with flying colors, I'm still confident that he's on the right track, and he's going to continue to get better. And by the end of this year, I think Alabama may have one heck of a quarterback by the end of the year when we're tallying it all up. But it's not going to be beautiful every week. It hardly is for anyone ever. In Peyton Manning's first start as a true freshman at Tennessee, he beat Washington State 10-9. And he would become maybe the greatest quarterback ever. They all have rough starts when they're young.
Yeah, and you've got to be able. This season is so interesting compared to past seasons because you lost to Texas. Now I will say, Ole Miss beating LSU, that feels significant, but at the same time, you still got to beat LSU. Like,
Mhm.
We'll wait and see how that plays out. But with the fact that Alabama already has a loss, there's this belief if they lose again. I mean, I guess it's still maybe possible they could win the SEC West, win the SEC championship, and get in as a 2-loss team. It's just never happened before. So you can't, their chances are diminished greatly with a second loss. And the fact that you suffered a loss in week 2 of the season, you're going into that Ole Miss game sweating it out. Is the season going to be over before September's over? Then you go to Mississippi State, and it's like there's some nerves there. My point is every game is magnified in the eyes of Alabama fans right now because you don't have room for error. Going to College Station a couple of years ago, Alabama had room for error. They lost that game. They ended up making it to the national championship. That is not going to be the case more than likely this year if they lose this game. And that's unfortunate. It makes everything more exciting. I mean, the anticipation from an Alabama fan's perspective, you're typically going into the Mississippi States and the Ole Misses and thinking that you're going to win pretty big, and then it's just considered a major disappointment if you don't win big. But a lot of these games just aren't as exciting because you have that room for error. This, from an Alabama fan's perspective, this is pretty new, and it kind of feels, the old BCS era where it's like you lose once and you're done. This kind of feels, getting back in that mindset, and that's I think that's going to take some years off some people's lives, but it's also exciting, and we should enjoy the ride. I mean, I think it's going to make for a very interesting season. If they lose to Texas A&M, the good part about it is you don't know definitively that they're out.
Right.
And when we're talking like they're going to lose to A&M, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, I'm probably going to pick a close game, but I'm going to probably pick Alabama to win with where they're showing improvement. But I'm saying that if, I'm preparing people. It's not like the season's completely over if they do lose this game, but it certainly hurts their chances. Let's talk about the offensive line because I think that's going to be critical to this weekend. And it's showing improvement too. All these different, it's interesting. Offensive line, run game, they're starting to improve. Jalen Milroe starting to improve. I'm not saying that the whole reason that Jalen Milroe is improving is because the other aspects are improving, but the things that it takes to help your quarterback feel confident and comfortable, the complementary run game, the opportunistic defense, the defense that's going to limit the opposing offense's success and put you in favorable positions. A strong special teams unit that puts you in favorable positions. The offensive line, all these different aspects, they're all coming together. And, you get a pick 6 against Mississippi State after Jalen Milroe picked up a botched snap and runs it for a touchdown. Now you got a 2-touchdown lead. That takes a ton of pressure off of Jalen Milroe just right there. Just those 2 plays. One was made by Milroe, takes pressure off of himself, but then the defense helps out. And it's not just, hey, if Mississippi State scores, it's a tie ball game. You got to, continue to have the foot on the gas. It's a different feel. So this offensive line is a critical part of the recent improvement from the team as a whole, but also it's going to play a major role against Texas A&M.
Yeah, and in terms of what's changed, I think it's just confidence. I think it's learning to play with each other. You also can't help but notice, they sub out Elijah Pritchett for a handful of snaps at left tackle. Terrence Ferguson was playing some snaps at right guard before he got banged up. Uh, I think that substitution maybe has lit a fire a little bit under starters who need to realize that their jobs are not permanent and they can be taken by someone that outperforms them in the games. So I think that might all be part of it. But I get back to very early in the season, earlier, when the offensive line was underperforming relative to expectations, and I was trying my best to come up with a logical reason as to why. And I came up with, you know, if you really break it down individually in terms of who's playing these roles, the most talented guys don't have a lot of experience. Caden Proctor had none. Tyler Booker started one game as a freshman and was just a part-time player coming into his true sophomore season. Even J.C. Latham was just entering his second season as a starter. He'd only had one season as a starter. And then the other two regular players, Seth McLaughlin and Darian Dalcourt, to be completely honest, let's just go by, NFL stock. They are experienced players, but they're not what I would call extremely talented. And by that, I mean, no one's talking about Seth and Darian Dalcourt being first round draft picks or even day two draft picks. They're just okay or good college football players, but they're not extremely talented. So it seemed like maybe the issue was the real talented kids didn't have a lot of experience, and the real experienced kids didn't have a ton of talent. And that's how I was explaining some of the September problems. Well, now the kids that didn't have much experience are getting it every week. Proctor's a more experienced player. He's seen more. He's blocked more. Every week, Booker's more experienced. Every week, Latham's more experienced. Now, Seth and Darren Dalcourt aren't going to snap their fingers and all of a sudden be perfect players or more gifted, but the more they play, the better they are. I think anyone out there would take a fourth or fifth year senior who's played a lot over the same talent for a kid, but he's a freshman or a sophomore. The older and more experience they get, the better they're going to be, most likely. So the point is, I think each week the experience period is helping them. The experience playing together helps them. And I think Tommy Reese and Wolford working together for the very first time, that's never happened until this year. That's probably something that's improving week to week. So I think the offensive line is better. I think they're going to continue to get better. I'm not even going to be shocked if it's a team strength by maybe November. But now that we're getting to game 6, I think it's time to hit their stride, and this is the week to do it because this will be the best defensive line they face all year. Better than LSU's, probably even better than Georgia if you get to play them at the end. It's a real talented group in College Station up front.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind with the A&M defensive line, it is certainly going to be, if not the best, one of the best. I mean, I'm trying to think of somebody that would be tougher, and no one comes to mind immediately. So I agree with you there. It's kind of like Georgia in the SEC championship a couple of years ago, where sometimes when you have that really talented defensive line, you don't feel the need to be as creative and to cause as much, do as much. It's sometimes just being a little bit too reliant on your talent. And that's what I'll be curious to see because we've seen Alabama struggle, with twist and slants and all these different things. Stunts. I don't know why I said slants, but stunts. I mean, twist, all any sort of movement up front, bringing pressure from different areas. You got a nickel corner coming off, crashing off the edge pretty much every snap against, South Florida. And Alabama's offensive line has struggled with those sort of things. And so you would think from Texas A&M's perspective, they would implement some of that to try to create confusion and things like that. But I also didn't, and maybe it was the fact that Georgia knew they had a mulligan, if they lost for whatever reason, A, they didn't want to reveal too much, and B, But part of me thinks they were a little bit too reliant on their talent in that SEC championship game. And you saw a very subpar Alabama offensive line have a lot of success against a defensive front that they shouldn't have had that level of success against. So that's something else I'll be watching, and I'll be talking about this more later on in some written pieces and stuff, but just wanted to bring that up. I agree with you. You're seeing growth from guys. This should be expected. I mean, Alabama's offensive line going into week 6 is better than the offensive line going into week 1. It's gelling, it's growing. We've talked about this. We just didn't know that the starting point would be as bad as it was, but they are showing growth. The one area that has to get fixed, though, Seth McLaughlin has got to get the snap issue fixed. Somehow, this continues to be an every week problem, and it has not caused Alabama to lose a football game. Part of that is because Jalen Milroe has overcome a lot. A bad snap, he runs it in, for a long touchdown against Mississippi State. He's throwing touchdowns. He's completing, 3rd and longs after a bad snap. He had the run against Middle Tennessee State off of a bad snap where he was able to pick it up and run it in. He's compensating for a lot. He's not compensating for all of it, but the fact that Alabama jumped on that football that McLaughlin had against Mississippi State, that's if State jumps on that, they get the ball in plus territory, and it's a tie, or it's a 0-0 ball game, and who knows how things could have spiraled from there. Luckily, Alabama was able to jump on the Kool-Aid return that was dropped, and they were able to get on that, botch snap, but that's got to get fixed. I know that he's probably not 100%. We don't know that definitively. But you would certainly assume that he's not. And it's rather concerning that it feels very forced. Like if he's not healthy and you're having these problems, it would not be absurd for the coaching staff to look at Seth and say, hey, let's get you 100% healthy. Let's work on, or at least healthier to where you can perform this job to the standard that you need to be able to, because you're not helping yourself and you're not helping us with the way you're playing. If they felt like they had an adequate option, which you would think that they would feel that way with Darian Dalcourt and the experience that he has, maybe the weight gain, I don't know. For whatever reason, they're not willing to make a change there when they're willing to try some things out at some other spots. And Jimmy, I can't. Is it a loyalty thing? Because these are the kind of mistakes. This isn't a missing a block and getting your quarterback hit. Like that's a big problem. And he's doing some of that as well. But it's more so these snap issues. They're stalling. They're drive killers. So what are your thoughts on Seth McLaughlin and his struggles right now, and how Alabama's handling it, not going to somebody else?
Well, it's a real scary thing that they haven't gone to somebody else. I mean, that part's sort of scary, meaning that they believe, because they're having these conversations. They're having these conversations probably every day to an extent. That's why they have staff meetings. And if when we see a problem, I assure you, they see a problem. They know this is a thing. It's just that, in their opinion, to this point, the other options are less good. And that's the scary part. Now, I'm wondering, in the most recent, Ferguson got banged up. When Deontay Lawson was banged up, Ferguson was banged up. So now, if you move Dalcourt to center, I'm not sure who would play guard. Whether Ferguson's healthy enough to play every snap there for right now, or whether you'd have to go to Jaden Roberts, and maybe they just feel like that's not a solution.
Great point.
The solution would be Seth snapping the ball better. And the thing is, we've seen him do it. That's the frustrating part. Last season, he was the center for most of the season. And while I don't know that anyone was putting his snaps last season in the Hall of Fame, we weren't talking about it every week. Every week, it wasn't a subject of our discussion here on the show that, boy, Seth's snaps are bad. But it is a discussion every single week here. I just, my only explanation is he's got the yips, which is, what golfers call it when all of a sudden they've been a good putter their whole lives, and now they can't make a 2-footer to save their lives. Sometimes we see it in Major League Baseball, where all of a sudden the second baseman who's made it all the way to the major leagues can no longer throw an accurate throw to first base from just 30 feet away. I think it's in his head, and he's just got the yips, in the sense that I think he just he's waiting for something bad to happen as he's standing over the ball, and hopefully it's something that will just magically go away. Until that time, Alabama has to consider other options. I'll tell you an option not too many people are considering, but I think it's possible. As I look back at 2021, Clint, to Seth in 2021, and when we went to him, it was a little bit of a surprise, and everybody thought, he's a redshirt freshman and he hasn't played much, and he seems kind of undersized. And next thing you know, he's getting Jordan Davis blocked in the SEC championship game. So I say all that to say, hey, by November, maybe James Brockermeyer's a guy you take a look at. He's playing with the twos when they go to garbage time. He's got a lot of experience now at Alabama playing center. His main problem will be his size, which was Seth's problem in 2021, and he managed it. But I think that's an option they may consider as the season progresses. It's just not ideal until James, adds some more quality weight.
Well, first of all, to speak to what you're saying as far as it kind of being a mental thing, if he was injured, if he had an injured thumb or something, that could cause poor snap location. That has nothing to do with you snapping the football when the ball doesn't need to be snapped,
Right.
So that points more to it being a mental block right now. Something's, his confidence it has been affected by the, constant struggles. I don't know that I've ever seen anything like it. I mean, I've never seen a center have every week problems, one or two that are like, man, a snap over the head, a snap that rolls back there that your quarterback, compensates for, snapping the football when your quarterback isn't even looking at, what the defense is doing, even looking in that direction. These are the kind of things, and there's not been one game, where we talked about Jalen Milroe and the turnovers, and hey, can you go to Mississippi State, avoid the turnovers, make progress in that area? And he certainly did it. Every week I'm waiting to say, okay, this was the week where McLaughlin didn't have any major. Maybe there were a couple that, Milroe had to kind of squat for or something, but there was nothing that could have been detrimental that he did. That has not been the case. I mean, we're 5 games in and we're talking about it every week. And that's something that's got to get corrected. And he knows that. I'm not saying anything that is revolutionary here. That's something the coaching staff certainly knows as well. But it does. It's got, a lot of fans are concerned about it, and rightfully so. And it's got to get fixed. If you're going to hold Milroe to these standards and say, hey, these problems, these critical mistakes that you're making that can get us beat, you got to say the same thing to Seth McLaughlin. You've got to get it fixed. You got to figure it out. And we'll have to wait and see how that turns out. One huge bright spot from Saturday night offensively, before we move on to the defense, is Amari Niblack. I thought that he had a fantastic game in 3 of Jalen Milroe's 4 starts this year. Niblack has 60+ yards receiving. He's had a few touchdowns. He's made some plays, and it's been, he's been a vertical threat at times. He's, winning the short to intermediate stuff. They even got him a carry on a jet sweep, kind of manufactured a touch for him that way. That's not something that you see from a tight end too often. That's some Brock Bowers type of stuff. And, he's doing some good things. And, he ended up having that incredible catch in the end zone that wasn't not called a touchdown. I haven't gone back to look to see, exactly what happened and everything. I saw it live, and I still got to go back and watch the offense in a lot more detail on the all 22. But he had a great catch. I thought he was celebrating a little bit too hard for someone that had just had an incompletion called. I love the passion and stuff. He certainly has some passion, but it was a great catch. It showcased your talent, but it wasn't a touchdown. And so I think maybe a little bit too excited. But I guess you'd rather it be that than, be completely mellow, don't care. He obviously cares and he wants to do well. So props to him on that. But Amari Niblack, huge mismatch problem, and is becoming a trusted weapon, even though it's on limited targets. Everybody's getting limited targets in this offense.
Right.
That's just part of it. But Amari Niblack, I mean, Jimmy, what are your thoughts?
Great player, getting better every week. Again, a young player that we didn't use much a year ago, but now you're using him all the time. And I'm very excited about what a weapon he can become, an even bigger weapon as they use him. One of the reasons you bring in Tommy Rees is he's sort of had a reputation for using tight ends in the offense. So I think Tommy Rees, as Amari gains more experience, as Jalen Milroe gains more experience, I think they'll use Amari in different ways to scheme him open. He doesn't really need a lot of help getting open. I mean, this is a guy that can line up at wide receiver and just get open against SEC defensive backs. I mean, he's got that type of athletic ability. I would just say, and since I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, we need to throw it to him even more," I agree. But keep him. We only ran 56 plays Saturday, 56 for the whole game.
Threw it 12.
Threw it 12 times. There's only 10 receptions to spread around to that huge receiver group where all of a sudden you're playing 7 guys and you're playing 3 tight ends. And now you're playing 3 or 4 running backs. So, 10 catches will spread everybody pretty thin. And, I agree with anybody. It would be great if Amari himself had 10 catches, but there's just limited reps, limited snaps to go around when you're playing games and only snapping the ball 56 times. But Amari has developed into one of the most dependable receivers. And frankly, the guy I would compare him to on the team right now, a guy that hasn't really made any impact at all, not really, or very minimal, has been Ja'Cory Brooks, who did have 1 third down catch the other night and an important first down. But Ja'Cory hadn't caught a lot of balls. But I just feel like Amari's taken Ja'Cory's catches. They're sort of similar players to me. They just play different positions. But now, if it's frankly, Clint, if it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, and Alabama has to throw the ball and has to have a receiver absolutely catch the ball and make the first, as an Alabama fan, I just assume them throw it to Amari Niblack as any player on the team.
Well, I mean, Jalen Milroe attempted 12 passes. Amari Niblack had 4 targets. That's a 33.3% target share. Go find. I don't think Brock Bowers is getting okay. He might be, but the tight end position in general in Georgia's offense is getting around, probably a 30% target share, and that's distributed. Last year it was Darnell Washington and it was Brock Bowers, and this year, they're going to. A few of these, targets and stuff are going to be going to other guys. So you very rarely see a tight end getting north of a 30% target. That's incredible. I mean, I don't think people realize Alabama has targeted the tight end. I want to say between like 15 to 17, 18% of the time. That's been the target shares. And yeah, I mean, and that's, that's with Cameron Latou, that's with, Jaleel Billingsley. They've targeted the position, but we knew it was going to increase. It was going to be more Notre Dame, Georgia-esque,
right?
Under Tommy Rees. But at the same time, it's 33%. I mean, that you can't do much more than that on. Yeah,
it's a whopping figure. I mean, 15, 17% to me is sort of like normal.
Yeah,
that's probably the normal figure. 33%, that is whopping, but it just shows that Amari gets open as well as anyone. He has dependable hands. I love maybe one last thing about him that's really good. These next level receivers, pass receivers, they're not satisfied with just catching the ball. They catch a ball and then make a play, and that's Amari. I mean, Amari wants to advance the ball. He's not okay with, hey, he threw it to me and I caught it. That's good, right? No, Amari catches the ball, and then he's immediately looking for a first down marker or the end zone. So I think as the season progresses, I don't know that we'll see more of a target share because 33% is so whopping. But what we will see, I think, is continued playmaking. And I think we predicted in the preseason, Clint, I can remember us saying in the preseason that Amari might lead the receiver crew in touchdown catches. And I'm more confident than ever we were right about that.
100%. Yeah. That should be the assumption, especially with the way that, Ja'Cory Brooks just kind of, that's a very strange situation. But I mean, there's only one football. It's a limited passing attack. You've got 7 or 8 different guys that you're trying to get involved. So it's very difficult. Defensively, though, let's talk a little bit more about that because what a performance. I mean, obviously there were some struggles to stop the run, that outside zone attack. You had the QB draw on, I think, a 3rd and 10. I think that was film study from Mississippi State and just watching how Alabama adjusted to Ole Miss down there on the goal line when Jackson Dart had the 3rd and goal from the 10. Now granted it was a different formation. Ole Miss was already, empty set, spread everybody out. I think it was a bunch set for Mississippi State, 3 receiver, trips to one side. They put the guy in motion, the running back, and as soon as he did, Campbell, was really trying to keep up with him as he was going out in motion, and the quarterback knew nobody's in the box. Like the 4 guys up front, that's it, and it was money. So that's good film study on their part. There were some other third down situations where it's like 3rd and long. Alabama wasn't expecting Mississippi State to run. Nick Saban brought that up, and they had quite a bit of success doing it that way. Give them props for. I mean, it's bold to run on 3rd and 10 when you're trying to stay in a football game, but it was very highly effective. But overall, Jimmy, this defense, 3 turnovers. I think they have 6 interceptions right now, and through 5 games. I think last year in 13 they had 7 interceptions. So they're almost to that point. All 3 levels, for the most part, I say the interior defensive line didn't have their best game overall against Mississippi State, but all 3 levels are doing some good things.
Yeah, overall, the defense playing great. And Saturday night, it was most of it was super. I mean, you have to look at the main thing. They gave up 260 yards, only 17 points on the road. The 3 turnovers. I mean, the main things were just fantastic. I think there's things you can nitpick, like you said, maybe stopping the run on some of these 3rd and longs. Hey, if that's the biggest problem you got on your team, things are going well. We can't stop the run when it's 3rd and 12. That's because you're designed. The defense is designed to stop the throw. On that play when it's 3rd and 12, you're expecting them to throw the ball, and I think they just kind of caught us. I would say by surprise, but it's really scheme and like you said, film study. It's knowing, hey, in this particular instance, they're going to be in dime. They're going to be light. They're not going to have heavy personnel on the field, and we can have more success on the ground when they're so light. And they did. But I think we're almost nitpicking. I was a little surprised that they gave up 17 myself. I mean, I sort of expected the defense in this particular matchup to maybe hold them to 7 or 10 or 13, somewhere in there. But I'm not disappointed in any way. Again, I think overall, when you look at the main numbers, what you're trying to do when you play Mississippi State, they forced Will Rogers into a highly inefficient night. I mean, Will's stat line is terrible. They also sacked him several times, which is what you expect. But again, holding them to 260 yards and a highly manageable score, that's all you can really ask of that group. And they are playing great. Again, I agree with that. The interior defensive line probably didn't have their best game, but they've played really well in other games. I don't think it's a situation where, hey, we need to worry so much about that group. It just wasn't their best night. But the linebackers and DBs did have a great night. Terrion Arnold, Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell, Jihad Campbell. Boy, what a dude that guy's turned it into. Yeah, this defense is good. I know it's bold to say it, Clint, but I'm going to keep on saying it. I think by end of the year, this is the best defense in the SEC, and Dallas Turner is the SEC Defensive Player of the Year.
I mean, it's just there's so many different players that you can point to that's just having not just good seasons, but great seasons to elite seasons. I mean, it's incredible. Like you brought up Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell being that number 2 guy, that complimentary piece opposite him, certainly having an excellent season. They're causing a lot of havoc in backfields. You've got, I don't think Jaheim Otis is 100% right now. And I do think that we should mention that because I don't think he played his best football. I don't think he was terrible by any means. I just don't think Saturday was the best game that we've seen them play at Alabama or even close to it. And I think, he didn't start the game. Tim Smith did. He was seen standing or watching some of the team drills and warm-ups. I think he played the 5th most snaps amongst the defensive linemen. All this points to a less than 100% Jaheim Otis, and he missed the USF game due to an injury. So, to think that he's, Nick Saban even said going into the Ole Miss game, he's back, he's practicing, but he's not 100%. So let's not assume that he is, but he's back. He's able to do enough. I think he's very limited right now. They're kind of keeping him on a pitch count. So that certainly affects things. But Jihad Campbell stepping up for Deontay Lawson. I do think that that Lawson's absence was more felt in this game than it was against Ole Miss. But at the same time, especially going back and watching, Jihad Campbell wasn't perfect, but the growth that he's made, despite the very limited experience, the fact that he was thrust into an every down role, and I don't mean every down like first down, second down, third down, he's going to play on all 3 downs. I mean, he did not come off the field. He was on the field for 100% of the snaps. Tresman Marshall was described as the signal caller, according to Nick Saban after the game, but he was on the field for 2/3 of the snaps. So that other third, the communication, field general responsibilities, it falls on Jahad Campbell. I'm sure Malachi Moore, who's playing elite football right now, incredible football right now. I think he certainly contributes on the communication front. It's very valuable. If he was back there at safety, it would be a little bit more difficult, but him playing up in the box, he can communicate with the secondary. He can communicate with the front seven. So that's, I think, beneficial for everybody. But Jahad Campbell, 14 tackles, half a sack, an interception. The 14 tackles, and I could be wrong. I didn't go back and look at every defensive back and everything, but I know it's the most tackles from an Alabama player this season.
Right.
And I know it's the most tackles for an Alabama linebacker since C.J. Mosley in 2014, since the Iron Bowl in 2014.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it might be 2013, but I'm pretty sure it's 2014. But that's almost a decade ago. So he was racking up tackles left and right. I love the way that Kevin Steele was using this inside linebacker group as far as pressuring quarterbacks. You saw Jahad Campbell get some true edge opportunities. He's got a history of that, playing that in high school. 4 quarterback pressures. He led the team on that front. Very effective, very efficient. And I think that, Tresman Marshall, by the way, Deontay Lawson, it's not just one guy that they're getting production from as far as the off-ball linebackers applying pressure. It's multiple. And that is coaching. Robert Bala is doing a phenomenal job. Kevin Steele or Travarius Robinson, I don't know who it is, don't care. Whoever's calling the defense, they're doing a phenomenal job of utilizing these guys. And it's making the need for like a pass rush specific package like the Cheetah package. You don't need it as much because you're getting that effective third rusher from an off-ball linebacker who can do a lot more and provide a lot more versatility than maybe a guy like Quandarius Robinson.
Yeah, and I think this upcoming weekend against Texas A&M, you're going to see a lot of nickel. I mean, I think when you play some teams, you might be more dime heavy than other games, and some games when you're playing somebody that runs the ball a lot with 2 tight ends, you're in regular a lot. I think A&M, I'm guessing this is going to be one of those Alabama's in nickel 80% of the time or more. But what's great about this inside linebacker group, Clint, is you can be versatile even without changing your personnel package. I mean, you can put those 11 guys out there that you put out there for nickel, but they can do different stuff. They're not just locked in. They're not just run stuffers or pass rushers, and sort of do it all. And Jahad, to me, is the poster child for that concept, because even though he's an inside linebacker, there is not a thing you would ask a linebacker to do that he can't. I mean, he can rush the passer. The 14 tackles indicates to me he's rangy and great in the tackle box. I mean, if it's in the tackle box, he makes the play. If the play gets outside, he runs it down. 14 tackles to me tells me this is a versatile, talented, athletic guy. But the fact he can rush the passer and then drop into coverage and make an interception. By end of like I said, I think Dallas Turner might be SEC Defensive Player of the Year, while people like me and you in late November are going, Dallas is SEC Defensive Player of the Year, and he deserves that. But I'm not so sure the best player on this defense isn't Jahad. I mean, we might be saying that in November.
Well, yeah. I mean, Deontay Lawson was playing like the best player in my opinion, and that include, granted, Dallas Turner's really turned it on. I mean, 5.5 sacks in his last 3 games. He's on pace for, I think, 13.5 right now. That would be the second most of the Nick Saban era for a single season, behind Will Anderson's 17.5 sacks in 2021. I mean, that's the kind, and this is with him not having a sack through the first 2 weeks. So he's been incredible over the last 3 games. You're getting the complimentary piece side of things from Chris Braswell, the secondary man. Wow. I mean, just Kool-Aid at a lockdown, complete shutdown level right now. Terrion Arnold playing like a first-round pick, a potential first-round pick. Caleb Downs got first-round talent. Malachi Moore's playing on an elite level right now. Just the makeup of this defense, they all complement each other well. Can you stop the run well enough to get to the passing downs? And when you do that, you've got an opportunistic secondary that's got a lot of talent and ability with versatility to kind of, disguise things, confuse quarterbacks, all those different things. And then you've got, a pass rush, a duo in Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell who can take advantage and get after the quarterback. And it's a good combination when everything's functioning as it should. It should have been a lot closer to this last year to a degree. But I think a big difference, no offense, I'm not trying to take shots at anybody, but I think a big difference has been Kevin Steele. So,
Yeah.
Jimmy, do you have anything else before we hop out of here?
No. Just that final comment. I agree. Kevin Steele deserves a lot of credit for this. Robert Balla deserves a lot of credit. I think we're better coached to that spot. I think that's helping. But overall, it's good personnel. That gets back to Nick Saban. The recruiting never really stopped at any point. And Alabama defensively, when they're out there, they're putting 11 high quality defenders on the field. And in the end, it's all about the Jimmies and the Joes and not the X's and O's. And there's a lot of really good players on that defense. Some of them are going to be playing football and getting paid pretty well for a long time.
Absolutely, man. And also quick shout out to the special teams. It flips field position. I mean, we talk about putting your quarterback in good situations. The first drive of the game stalls out. Milroe takes an unnecessary sack. Burnip punts at 67 yards and somehow pins Mississippi State on the 1 yard line. It wasn't like a player jumped on it. It was a great punt. And then they have to punt it back to Alabama. And now Alabama's got the football around midfield. And the reason that they're getting a very favorable situation was defense got to stop, sure, and that's big. But it was Alabama got a 67-yard punt from its punter, which completely flipped field position by the next time that they got on the field for the offense, and that's huge. And Will Reichard, 4 for 4 on field goals, 2 48-yarders, all 4 extra points made. Phenomenal performance from him as well. And just across the board, Alabama, we probably don't even have to mention it. Everybody knows it, but they are getting elite special teams play right now. And I at least want to give them a shout out and give them some credit. So, Jimmy, I appreciate you hopping on here with me. This has been fun. Didn't go quite as long today, but next week we will be back once again for another recap, hopefully recapping an Alabama win versus Texas A&M. But as always, brother, I appreciate you.
Looking forward to it. Huge game Saturday, and hopefully we'll have a lot of good news on next Monday's show.